Hi, my name is Caesar and welcome to Tips for Landlords and Property Managers brought to you by FastTV.com Law Group. Hi, welcome to another Tips for Landlords and Property Managers video. Today we'll go over some helpful tips to consider during the application and screening process. We'd like to remind you that the contents of this video is not to be considered legal advice. Please make sure you are respecting all local, state, and federal discrimination ordinances. On today's episode, we're going to cover some tips to consider when you're going through the application and screening process. We will cover the major areas you should check, which include income, work history, credit history, and of course, rental history. Before we get started, it is good practice to pre-screen tenants right over the phone to avoid wasting each other's time. A good tip would be to have a pre-screening checklist to go over when a potential tenant calls you. For example, if your rental unit has a strict no smoking or no pet policy, you can quickly weed out a lot of prospects this way. The first major area to cover is income. Does the potential tenant make enough money to cover rent? I'm sure by now, as a landlord, you have heard of the golden 3x rule. In case you haven't, it's a pretty standard rule where the applicant's gross monthly income must be at least 3 times the asking rent. Landlords often take their current length of employment into consideration as well. Is the applicant important in the company? Does he or she have a history of bouncing around jobs? Stability in employment can show stability in the applicant's life, which often results in longer tenancies. When verifying employment information, try and look up the company's info on Google and call the public phone number to avoid any trickery. Some good questions to ask your applicant's boss are: how long has the applicant been employed? Ask about the applicant's salary. What are their responsibilities? Ask about job performance. Do you plan on keeping them as an employee? How do you verify your prospect's income? What documents should be okay to verify income? Here are some you can take into consideration: paycheck stubs, tax returns, bank statements if they have direct deposit, letter from employer. Please note that all of these documents can be purchased online fairly inexpensively at about $4.99 per page. You shouldn't base your decision on this alone. The next area is work history. This area is important because it can show how stable your prospect is. If the applicant has been at the same job for 10 years plus, great. This is also a great opportunity to gain a wider scope on the applicants, as you can also ask their previous employers the same questions as their current employer. The next important area to cover is credit history checks. Running a credit history report on your applicant will tell you a few things, such as whether they can pay their bills or credit cards on time. This directly relates to whether or not they will pay their rent and bills in a timely manner. Another thing it will tell you is the amount of debt the applicant has and if this will hinder the ability to pay their rent. So what credit score do most landlords look for? The average landlord looks for a FICO score of 620 or better. A FICO score of 620 to 679 is considered average, whereas anything in the range of 680 to 699 is considered good. Always run a credit report yourself. Never accept one from the tenant. This is the only document they cannot alter or change. It's the one rock solid thing you have to tell the story of their payment history and their true debt. This will also confirm their current employment information. Last, but definitely not least, is the previous addresses and evictions history. It is a very good rule of thumb to have the applicants list at least 3 previous addresses with landlord contact information. If they provide only one, and this potential tenant was a nuisance, it is most likely that this landlord will tell you whatever you want to hear to get rid of them. If you contact a second or third landlord, however, they are no longer affected by the situation and will most likely paint a truthful story about your candidate. Some questions to ask previous landlords include: how much rent did they pay? Did you serve any 3-day notices during the tenancy? Did they take care of the rental? Would you rent to them again? Eviction and judgment history should play a big part in your decision as well. You can check your local housing court records to ensure your prospect is free of evictions and/or damaged judgments. At this point, you can decide whether your prospect meets your rental criteria or not. Bonus tips. Do not sign a lease until your tenant has paid first month's rent plus deposit. Never allow them to move in without a deposit or a payment plan for the deposit. Take the first full month's rent up front and prorate the second month in case they move in mid-month. You can charge an application fee to cover your screening costs. The maximum amount you can charge is $50.94, and you must disclose both your hard and soft costs to the applicant in a receipt. For example, you charge the applicant $45, the credit report costs $25, and $20 for admin fee. Thanks for joining us. We hope these tips help you during the application and screening process for finding your next tenant. Please like, share, and subscribe. We'll see you on the next one.